Meteorologist Casey Cloud live with you here on this Sunday afternoon, looking like a victory Sunday for the Jacksonville Jaguars. But wet weather has been playing a role in the game, and just in the travel home, the travel all day. It hadn't been as heavy as it could have been, to be quite honest, which is great news. But the Jacksonville Jaguars, they're taking the final snaps of the game. The backup quarterback, Nick Mullins, in there after Trevor Lawrence, a phenomenal day, getting the job done. Unfortunately for Indianapolis, their quarterback suffering a severe injury, it would seem. Their starting quarterback, and the wet weather may have played some role in that even. Not really sure there. According to the CBS broadcast, an Achilles injury for quarterback Daniel Jones there for the Indianapolis Colts. But what a great job by Jacksonville as we have these wet, conditions as wet roads. Got to be careful here as folks are getting ready, falling out, maybe watching me from the parking lot there at Everbank Stadium, getting ready to go even as the final minute or so ticks away, and Jacksonville's going to win 36-19. Jacksonville Jaguars, great job. The touchdowns there on offense, the safety by the defense, Cam Little's field goals there as well, extra points, just, in the wet conditions, not as long as some of them he's had, but it could have been wetter, but still getting that job done. But now folks need to be careful getting home, as we are seeing some little bit heavier accident coming around the I-75 corridor there and toward parts of Columbia and Union counties, moving toward Bradford here over the next little bit. Not severe, for most of our area. We're not expecting severe weather today. There's not much lightning, but our southern few counties actually do have a small chance of some severe weather. Just saw a gust to 19 miles an hour in Gainesville. Still could have a few gusty, downpours here in the, areas south, of, that I-10 corridor even, but really south of Gainesville and toward Marion and Flagler and Levy is where we could have an isolated severe storm. In theory, there's even a low tornado risk now. But might end up being further south, and no folks down there toward the Tampa Bay area not too happy about their NFL game this afternoon, as it ended in a loss against the New Orleans Saints. For Tampa there, a team, New Orleans, who really hadn't won much all year, came into Tampa and won. It could have, things would have transpired a little bit differently, had a lightning delay there, but ended up not needing that. It didn't seem. As we look down that way, you can kind of see some heavier downpours, but the lightning off toward the north and west. Some of that could be severe. That may end up being just south of our covered area we shall see, but I know that commute home on those roads and toward Jacksonville, a happy one, but you got to be cautious. The slick roads here, some of the oils, it's not been heavy enough, maybe to wash everything away, but we've had a half inch here towards dark, so most of that probably washing away at this point. But got to be careful, got to have those lights on here, and the like in these type of conditions. Again, it could have been heavier as I'm looking here. Let me see how much they picked up at Everbank Stadium and no weather stem site here. As I know, that game did conclude Jacksonville winning 36-19. If you're just tuning in here, nothing severe in our area. We have a small chance in the southern areas, but I know in Jacksonville, Everbank Field, last 24 hours, 0.65 inches of rain. It could have been more than that. Could have been an inch or two or even three. We didn't really get the banding to set up as heavy as it could have, but rain was a story. That definitely was a game where it was poncho weather for sure. Still a pretty wet game overall in Jacksonville, playing a role in the game there. Jacksonville now in front of the AFC South at 9-4. What a great job again by Trevor Lawrence, Liam Cohen there. But got to be careful now going home. So we need to go ahead and look at some of these traffic cameras here. So let's go ahead and pull some of these up here as we look toward that area. As that, commute there towards some of these different roads could be a little bit rough. Some folks probably leaving early because of the score being kind of out of hand, but you just never know. Earlier in the year, Jacksonville, it looked like they were going to beat Houston out there in Houston, and it didn't end up happening with a similar lead. But the quarterback being out, and having to make a change mid-game, not having a game plan, maybe a big, enough, ahead of time like they would have in Houston when their quarterback was out. That played a big role probably. As we're looking here and as we're tracking things. Let me go ahead and pull up this traffic camera though. This is a live looking toward the River City, and you can see what we're dealing with, and that is the nasty conditions there on the area roads. Even seeing the camera shake a little bit here. Just always important, with field goals. And I didn't remember necessarily. I wasn't looking at every, play, but I didn't see the one too bad there from what I was looking at. But that rain was definitely a story. Those field goals went in, so that's all that mattered for Jacksonville. Really, those extra points going in, Cam Little, and that whole operation there with the punter there doing the holding. Logan Cook and the long snapper Raj Matisic there. So again, you can just kind of see that in River City. You can kind of tell there how gloomy it is, but not a gloomy feeling. But you got to be careful. We don't want to have accidents. We've had accidents even here in Bradford County recently. Even sadly, we've had some situations that have even turned deadly in our area here with accidents lately. That happens, when we have inclement weather, whether it's fog or other hazards. So just got to be really careful here as we're looking. Definitely, I know the lights were on at the stadium there in Duval, and you just got to be really careful on the road as we look there live into toward Jacksonville right now. All these different lanes. It could be busier, but you see a lot of folks there. As they should have their lights on as they're going toward the camera, and we can't tell going away. But this is definitely some inclement weather as we're looking live into toward Jacksonville right now, giving you a look at things there into toward Duval County. And we were looking at I-95 there beyond Riverside. Let's see what else we can kind of pull up. We'll try to get right there as close as we can toward the stadium. As folks are leaving, we'll get there to State Road 115 at mile marker 6.5, the MLK Parkway area, and see some flashing lights and the like. So let's go ahead and pull that up. Not necessarily probably enough rain for flooding. Luckily, it could have been even in an urban area. It wouldn't take as much as the rest of the area here with the concrete, but we haven't really had enough to have that type of situation maybe. But you can see here, definitely, a rough go of it in some of these spots here. Because of, as you're looking more so on the left side of the screen, it's a little bit slow go because of the inclement conditions right now in Duval County. We warned you guys about this, really all week, telling you. I know this week we're not going to have a Tuesday update, but we're telling you Tuesday night, Thursday night. We really mentioned Thursday heavy downpour if possible. We had some, but not as many as we could have had. Some of that's starting to change now. That's a little bit delayed. It's not going to have quite as high rainfall totals, but I know here used to start on our rain gauge since midnight. We picked up 6/10 of an inch here, exactly 6/10 of an inch. So 58 degrees of temperature right now here east of Stark. But you can see here the conditions into Duval County as we're giving you that viewpoint there and trying to keep you guys up to date on all of that. Let's go ahead and see what else we can kind of pull up here as we look at the situation there and toward Jacksonville. We'll pull up some cameras toward the South Bank there. Pull up one around Hendricks Avenue. I'll go ahead and pull up Hendricks Avenue right now to see how things are going. Again, it's wet. The weather, definitely can't put a roll here. If things, you got to go slow here, in these situations, as you can lose that. You can lose that kind of footing there, that control there of your vehicle on the road. I mean, even important to do that in the stands. Don't want to fall down in the stands there. That was the story earlier. People are now exiting mostly, but in the concourses and the like here, as people are headed out. You can see this camera's taking a little out. Again, I-95 at Hendricks Avenue. The game began a little bit more one-sided in Jacksonville's favor. Probably did help some. I mean, if it was in Indy's favor, then I guess it would have been even maybe more spread out. But Jackson getting the job done. That's what everybody, mostly wants to see around here, including myself. But, some folks might have stayed a little later, but it could have been, if it was a last-second finish, could have been more of a rush. I'm sure right near the stadium it probably is more crowded, and we can see on these cameras, though, as people are trying to get out of the parking lots and the like, navigating the, lower than normal, not really low visibility, but lower than normal visibility here as we're looking at things, as we're tracking them here, as we give you guys the very latest on the situation. So again, that's kind of the storyline there. I know folks are leaving a Tampa game where that, even heavier downpour down there. It was not one-sided. It ended up going against Tampa, but some folks probably getting heavy downpours there as they go north from Tampa. That's not our covered area, but we may have some folks down there, Buck fans, that might have went down there. Now they're getting caught in towards some downpours as they're exiting out maybe on I-275 or something like that. In towards some of those different zones. So that's something to kind of bear in mind here as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things. In fact, I'll go ahead and pull up one of those cameras here right now, as some of these downpours could be even lower visibility type of downpours here. We'll pull this up in toward the Tampa Bay area, and you can kind of see here, definitely slick conditions at points. Is a little bit more, maybe catch you off guard because heavier downpours at times and a situation here where things are, one that it goes from not rain to pretty heavy here. So you got to be very mindful. You got to be very careful here in this type of scenario, this type of situation here. As we're looking, you can see a lot of those lights on there with the braking that's going on right now. So just got to be very mindful of what's going on. Folks trying to be extra cautious here and the like. As we're looking at the overall situation, as we're looking at things and as we're tracking them. So again, let me go ahead and move away from this view right now, though. Again, that's down to where Tampa is. People are also leaving that one there as we give you guys the very latest here. Again, just trying to keep you up to date here as we give you, all those latest details here. Some folks, having those tail lights on with their headlights as well down there toward Tampa for sure. As we go ahead and give you guys, the latest here. I know college football fans in Miami happy about their team going to the college football playoff. Notre Dame, not so much. Very, very disappointed. They deserve to be in as well. Alabama did not deserve to be in. Miami, though, their game was on the road up in New York today. The Dolphins are switching over to the NFL, but South Florida weather pretty calm right now in the 80s down there. You can see that southerly wind coming in here as we look at some of these heat index values, even there getting a little bit higher in early December. So, folks happy down there as we look at the situation. And, the NFL game there, the Dolphins did go on the road, though, and they won up in New York area, their New Jersey area, 34-10 against the New York Jets. But you can see some moderate downpours as switch back local now into toward parts of Columbia County right now. If there's some, folks on the road with us for the Jags game or not, around Lake Butler there in Union County, up toward Lulu and Columbia County, a moderate rain on State Road 100 right now. Haven't had a lot of rain in a while. It's still, not as heavy as it could have been, but still one of our winter days and months here around Stark. I mean, half an inch plus here on the rain gauge over, 0.61 now. But as we look toward the southern counties, I alluded to that there could be a risk of some stronger storms. And that would be, you saw the green area here, and I have this. It shows our rotational potential here, in terms of the atmospheric characteristics. And then Ellen over toward Bellevue mainly. I say southern counties. It might just be really, more about just southern Marion at this point with a potential in our area. But technically, if you look at the map here, the Storm Prediction Center does have a risk for these green zones for a small chance of a tornado. Cedar Key up to Williston, Ocala, into southern Putnam, and all the way up to Palm Coast. So we have to be mindful of that. I kind of think if we had something materialize, it'd be a little bit further south, maybe toward the Tampa Bay TV market there, probably the most likely. As we look and as we track things, there's your wind risk as we look. I mean, that technically goes all the way into southern Alachua. The tornado risk pretty much, the same there. The low end risk as we look and as we track things. I know this stuff has lightning, which can be indicative of some severe potential. We'll be wondering where that goes here over the next little bit. I know sometimes these radars, when we look at stuff in the Gulf, it's harder to see where it's headed. But, I mean, it looks pretty impressive on some other modes here with even rotation. Doesn't mean it'll always hold together, but it looks like it's more headed toward the Tampa Bay market. Hernando County down through Tampa. So, again, that's what we're looking at. Their temperatures. I'll take off the wind mode here and put on the temperatures. If you bear with me just a second here, we're going to turn off one mode here. We're going to put on our temperatures. You can see them in the 70s down there, more indicative of severe potential. 66 in Ocala, 64 in Palm Coast. And you get lower 60s, becomes really unlikely. We're kind of on the other side with the wind direction as well with the boundary. So that's going to preclude a severe potential here once you get north of about, let's just say, McIntosh per se. As we look at things, there's a little, according to our signature system, a weak rotation, maybe Levy, Marion. We're so far on the radar. We always have trouble down here. I mean, the parameters are right on the edge. There is a boundary here, and sometimes stuff can spin along a boundary, but we're so close excuse me, so far away, not close on the radar. And that's precluding us from getting a good look. But you do see the winds kind of shifting around here. Winds coming from the southeast and Citrus County, coming from the east there around Levy County. So we're kind of on a boundary coming from the northeast here as we get further north, southeast. So you have a boundary here, and sometimes things can spin up in theory right along that boundary here. So we have to be very mindful as we're looking at things, we're looking at the overall scenario here. Calling this a warm front, and at points you can call it a stationary front, but kind of calling it more of a warm front here at this point as we look at things and as we track them here. So I just always have to watch out along these boundaries here as we look. We have a lower pressure out here in the Gulf as well. So, look at things. I know you see some of the lower pressure by a little ways. We're at 1,015 here east of Stark on our barometer, but we're down to 1,012, 1,011, or close to that in the Gulf anyway. So not a deep low pressure at all, but it is, tropical systems. You generally would have, a weaker tropical storm. You have maybe 1,005 millibars, give or take, and you have severe potential with that. This is, really low end risk. We're mainly just wanting to make sure people get home safe from that Jaguar game with all this wet weather. People so excited about the Jags win, but such a huge one of the bigger regular season wins the Jags have ever had. I mean, you don't want to compare this to the playoffs. They still play the Colts again. Anything could happen, but what a great job there by Jacksonville today as we go ahead and pull up here. We're going to pull up some more cameras as we look, see toward Jacksonville. Let's see, is there a report? It looked like a crash there in Duval County down I-295 west north there, but and between really the San Jose Boulevard, Buckman Bridge area, right lane blocked, intermediate severity according to Florida 511. Now the camera for that area, I don't necessarily see it. Let me see if there's more views before oh, here we go. I see it on this one. Okay, yeah, here we go. I see it on here. So let's go ahead and pull this one up. This is getting a little away, but it's possible, people headed to the south away from the stadium could already be in that area, leave early. And even if not, it's an accident. We always got to be, no matter what, it's an accident in wet conditions. And there you go. Here's a live look at that I-295 west there. You can see the vehicles, it looks like, in, that area there, kind of off the road there toward the shoulder the best they can. I mean, it's, you see that pretty big wall there, so they can't actually get, obviously you can't get off, completely there. That's what you have to do. But as you look here and as you track things, you can kind of see what we're looking at there and what we're tracking. You can kind of see the situation here. And just always in these wet conditions, don't know what caused it. May have not been that, but definitely something to look at there on I-295 right now, unfortunately. So you have to be careful here as we're tracking the situation. Crash there in towards southern Duval County. So a live look at that. I know I wish we had traffic cameras here in Bradford County, to be quite honest, that we could look at on Florida 511. I mean, you don't want to ever see anything bad happen live, but after the fact, to see the backup and stuff like that would be really, really helpful. So hopefully that'll happen maybe on that, that bypass there, that truck route here. That'd be something. They have it on the new toll road there in North Clay County, some cameras. I may pull some of those up just to kind of see. I know a lot of times I pull them up, they're pretty quiet, but as we go ahead and look at things and as we track things, just kind of, show you how some of the wet conditions are down there. We'll look there just not too far away from Asbury Lake. You'll be able to kind of see what we're dealing with here. There's a lot of folks, not even using these roads, it doesn't seem, but there's one vehicle passing by. And you can see another one, but definitely kind of sports traffic out there in North Clay County right now on that toll road, 23 here into North Clay County. But in these conditions, I guess if you have that pass and you don't have to deal with too much traffic, it's about just maintaining your speed and, maintaining the distance there, when any other cars are around. Just following the laws there, obviously. It's kind of what we're looking at right now in North Clay County. So let's go ahead and move away from that as we go ahead and jump back On to some other views here in the Doppler radar. It's always important here. I don't know, the exact storyline on this, but we got another alert. Now, I don't have a camera, but rail crossing blocked there in Duval County and South Edward Avenue now, north of Roosevelt Boulevard. Lanes are closed as of 4:31. A minor severity incident there with the, inclement conditions. And a rail crossing blocked in Duval County on Prudential Drive, west of the Acosta Expressway. So, sometimes this could just be how, things have to be in these type of situations. As we look in the overall situations, grand scheme of things. But let's go ahead and pull up this camera. Now we're going to pull up the I-95 at Acosta Bridge exit here. So let me go ahead and pull up that view. You can kind of see what we're looking at. Look at that. I mean, there's different bridges sometimes over the years. That Gate River Run, always a story, and people having to go, up a bridge or something like that, or down a bridge, and you can kind of see what we're dealing with right now with the actual traffic, from the vehicles, and not pedestrian traffic, obviously. So, as we kind of give you guys the very latest here on the viewpoint here in toward Duval County. So, again, I'm just trying to give you guys the visuals out here. It's 4:35 is the time. Again, it's always important to be safe headed home from the game, or no matter where you're at sunset here. A little less than an hour away here in Stark. So, same story in Jacksonville, a little less than an hour away. And then that'll, further reduce that visibility, obviously. So, this time of year, it's definitely, the game ended pretty good timing to get home before it's dark, if you're going like home to Stark, as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things here. So that is definitely, some good news. Years ago they had that Seattle game. That was a late game. That was a big one years ago. And they had a really good team in regular season. A lot of big games at night, and in inclement conditions, that would be, more significant concern on the roads here as we're looking and as we're tracking things. So, again, there's another Florida 511 view there from, the state of Florida, and that, traffic system that they have, and there's traffic cameras that help us tell that story. As we go ahead and look here, let's see, let's pull up I-95 at Union Street here right now, in toward Duval County. We're just gonna go ahead and keep giving you some more visuals here. Just gotta always be careful with these slick conditions. Don't want to lose control here. The traction on the roads and the like. At least we're not getting flooding. It wasn't enough rain. I thought there was a chance of that. If these downpours would have been a little bit heavier in the metro here, that could have been an issue, because even only a couple inches, an area with all that concrete could have really caused problems. Some of the long line areas there in toward downtown Jacksonville and the like. But luckily, did not materialize that way so far, and not with the game anyway. So, that's for sure. So even though it is wet out there and definitely slick, not ice, this isn't up north, but it still, can be a hazard here. Don't always have this around. It is early December, though. I guess we're lucky it's, 60-ish out there. 58 here east of Stark. It could be, if it's 28, then I don't know. What would they have done? Would they even wanted to play the game today? I know there are parts of the country you might play, but we had this kind of rain, it would have been, or kind of precip, I should say, would have had a, wintry precip if it was below freezing. So, luckily, nothing like that. We had some of that concern back in January here toward north central Florida, northeast Florida, and saw it materialize significantly with all that snow around southwestern Georgia. As we're always on top of things here. Our coverage area, our 62 counties. We're always watching the situation here for you guys. We're in Bradford, giving you guys the latest 4 to 62 counties here. Just trying to update you guys, keep you up to date here on these type of weather situations. So again, I know you can watch on the different platforms when we're live, Facebook, 2 different pages, Twitter/X, YouTube, Twitch, and the website has the interactive radar and, some different other links. I mean, yeah, even have tornado safety tips that are available. Tornado safety tips that are available there. Clouder.com/severe. You have the EF scale. Tropics aren't relevant now at this point. Hurricane season's officially over. But you can see, like I talk about on there, the worst storm by each of our 62 counties here since the naming of the tropical cyclones in 1950. Each county on a map there. We've seen that a lot on here, but if you haven't seen it, it's over there on the website. As we go ahead and look toward Dunellen here and toward Marion County, let's just go ahead and look at some of these situations so far away on the radar. Normally, I wouldn't be as, if I saw what I saw closer on radar, I would not even think there's a chance this is severe tornadic. We're just so far away on the radar. This isn't why we're on, but, we're talking about the commute home more than anything for folks, but the slick commute home. But we have, there could be a little weak rotation on Dunellen. Who knows? We're so far away on the radar. It hadn't happened in a while that much because the conditions haven't been there, but we have a lot of tornadoes that, just over the years that we have in a corridor down here that it's just hard to get warnings on because we're so far away. We're looking so high up on the Doppler radar here, folks. We're having to look at like 10,000 feet. We're supposed to be able to see, at a lower level. You don't want to be too low. You want to be at a certain level. You're seeing more up, higher up into the atmosphere versus lower down here. And that makes things difficult for, what type of wind could actually be reaching the surface and determining that. The temperature might be better angle on this as we have stuff down, here that needs to be watched. Some of this is, legit rotation. No marine warnings yet, but some of that looks, pretty nasty out there further out in the coastal waters. And then we're going to Tallahassee, I know, it's a situation there in North Leon County. We're on wishing everybody the very best as final exams start tomorrow at FSU for that fall semester. It's a gloomy one. Probably good exam study and weather there, as we're looking out there in toward Leon County. That is for sure. So this is the type of weather, just wishing everybody the best. Good luck on those exams there tomorrow and for the rest of the week. As we're looking out there toward Tallahassee, we're going to pull up some different views right now of a wet Tallahassee. It's not, overwhelming downpours there, but, as we're looking, toward Tallahassee, you think of FSU, obviously, my Seminoles, and you think also the academic side. This is a huge academic week with those exams. I know, students there, going, for those degrees so important. Some folks graduating at the end of the week even, some maybe in the spring or summer or just in the years to come, I know. And we also have, the sports side of things where I know we've talked a lot about the football team struggles the last couple years after that playoff snub in 23, but Mike Norvell's done a tremendous job with the academics, the APR, academic progress rate, really has improved over the last, many years. It's been steadily on that uptick there. What a great job by Mike Norvell and that staff there on the academic side of things. Something, some teams have been opting out of bowls. I don't know exact, it may not happen. They may not, end up getting in a bowl at 5-7, but some teams, at 5-7 may because of the academics, and FSU is right in contention for that at least. I know, it's more about the practice than the game. Practice is in the game, but whether they get that or not, the point is the academics, have really been on the uptick there with the football team. Congratulations to Mike Norvell on that and the academic, and athletic staff there as 3/4 of an inch of rain there in the last 24 hours in toward the FSU Weather Stem site there. Just 1/100 of an inch per hour right now, but definitely, people, have those minds on those exams here. That mind on your exam tomorrow morning, early in the morning maybe, and you gotta just be careful on the slick roads. Gotta be careful walking across campus. It's easy sometimes even slip and fall on campus or, near campus to just be very careful if your mind's on exams. Sometimes people are just so, focused on those exams, just so important. Just gotta be careful as we look at Copeland Street and Pensacola Street here right now on this Florida 511 camera. Those exams start in about 15 hours or so in toward Tallahassee as you're getting things going on that Monday. So, depending on when, some folks don't have them, until maybe later on in the schedule, but some earlier on there as we're looking and as we're tracking things. So just continuing to give you guys the very latest here on all of that. Let me go ahead and pull up another camera view right now. We'll get over closer to the FSU EOAS building. Call it a new EOS building, but it's been there about 5 years now. Opened up there, I believe, weather studio there in that building right before COVID started in 2020. Yes, there as we look and as we look out there right now, look at all that traffic. I mean, people may be headed to the libraries or headed to other places to study. Just gotta be careful. Gotta stay safe there and gotta watch out for wet conditions. That's a slew of traffic. I mean, I guess it's possible some people could have went out of town for the weekend and now making sure they're back before there's early exams. That's a lot of traffic there, right there by the newest. It's been over 5 years since it opened now, but I want to call it new. I've been there once and looking at that a few years ago, but it was just so highly anticipated when I was there. And it eventually opened there in 2020 after I graduated. But Tennessee Street and Woodward Avenue there, as we're looking at this, people, we had all that traffic pile up in the light that all went through there now. And you see the slick conditions, just got to be careful, these wet, conditions here. I know we've hyped it up maybe more in a way than we should. I know there's only so much you can say about wet roads and wet conditions, but we just haven't had rain in so long, and now things like, Jaguar games and exams are happening. People's minds aren't focused on, the adverse conditions are not severe, probably maybe all of us, at least most of us aren't going to have severe weather for sure. Just that southern friend I've, alluded to here as we're looking at things and as we're tracking them, so that is something that just gotta be mindful of the rain here as we're giving you guys the very latest update. So again, that's a look there. Let me go ahead and move away from that viewpoint right now. Want to pull up some of our forecast model information here. I know already folks went into that forecast for that Jaguar Jet game next Sunday there at 1 o'clock on CBS in Duval County. And right now, we're just going to be, seeing that trend. Next Saturday, it'll be sunny. It'll be pretty cool in the 60s as we're looking and as we're tracking things, as we're monitoring things. And just looking at some of the European model guidance behind the scenes here right now. As you get towards Sunday, maybe a small chance of a shower. Nothing too crazy there. And those temperatures, though, pretty nice, it would seem, at this point, compared, weather this week, temperatures aren't a big difference, maybe a little warmer, as we're looking mid-60s, mid-upper 60s, maybe not that rain around. Not a guarantee yet. I know we were expecting more rain today, but still had those downpours at times and the slick conditions at other times as we're looking toward parts of the coverage area. So, again, let me go ahead and move away here. Let me go ahead and pull up some forecast model information here. You can see what it was thinking for maybe about 4 o'clock. But let me, what, I'm going to go a little bit further up here, and we'll go to our latest run-in from the 3 o'clock view that's available. This is getting out to 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. Again, the model one hadn't been all that great, but you see, some of that heavier convection more so on the southern fringes of the area, and maybe more organization. This is kind of aggressive here. Maybe some warnings even down towards Citrus County, Homosassa Springs, over toward Bushnell, or Bushnell, some folks call it one, some folks call it the other. Brooksville there, Newport Richie. Some of these look like they could be close to needing warnings. Maybe, maybe Southern Putnam, Marion, Flagler, St. John's, maybe. I kind of, it's going to be tough for that, luckily. But sometimes this stuff under the Gulf's hard to see until it gets nearer to the radar sites in the coast, and you kind of get surprised a little, as this is pretty aggressive here with a line, coming through of at least some stronger storms, and maybe even some intermittent warnings we shall see. So the satellite, I mean, that's something we use, and it's showing a pretty vivid picture, but how does this hold together? We are getting closer to sunset, so that could limit some of this, but you see some of our views here do have a lot of moisture in the upper levels here down. This is more, on our very southern fringes here, almost out of our area, more so than anything, but it could clip. I mean, we have the supercell composite values. We have some tornado parameters, especially heading toward, like areas there like Hernando County, give or take, and further south. The instability, if you kind of draw a line on this, you go east, you look at like Citrus County south, maybe Clifton Marion with that ton of instability, but does it even make it inland with this? I mean, some of it may. I mean, but then we're getting closer to sunset here too, which plays a role, even though the temperatures, some of these spots down here, are in the mid 70s, but you see there's not, as I pull up visible satellite here, there's some breaks in the clouds here, broken cloud cover, even some sun trying to shine through in Polk County, but the sunset's less than an hour away, so do the right conditions, or really, I should say the wrong conditions, come together for some severe weather. This time of year is always kind of tricky. The low pressure isn't all that deep, so I wouldn't expect that many warnings, but there could be a few. I mean, there could be a spin-up tornado right there around Tampa. That can happen. That has happened in these situations. I mean, I remember looking at the analogs the other day. It's not something I really thought about much since because we're focused more on our area, but some of the analogs were showing, in this pattern over the years, decades, tornado down there in this overall atmospheric pattern. We're not really so much up here. I'm going to go back on that because I have a system, I know, that my system at all. It's from St. Louis University, but it's an analog system that really can help us sometimes that I look at here behind the scenes that kind of can show some of these overall patterns here and the favorability with the overall severe conditions. So I'm trying to go back on this to see where I saw that. I see there's a special marine warning now. Inglewood, Tarpon Springs. So that's going to pop up here in a second. Just trying to check a few things here in the World Weather Center. It was a few days ago. I had to go pretty far back here on some of this, but it's going about 84 hours, which would have probably been about now, to a few analogs with some severe weather. So we had a situation here in 1993, not the storm of the century, but a couple months before that, January 16th, a pretty similar pattern simulated from a few days ago for 84 hours from that, 4th, so getting out to now, give or take. As you see that marine warning on that screen, that blue is probably gone, but we had a analog down there, Tampa to maybe the Port Charlotte area had some, reports of severe weather, even some tornadoes, 3 of them in there in 1993 in this atmospheric pattern. We had another setup back in, according to St. Louis University, in 2016. Was that, I'm trying to remember, that was one when I was at FSU. I'm trying to remember what pattern was that the night. Let me check here. Checking these dates real quick. This isn't something, I plan on doing, but since there is that small chance, it's worth talking about at least. Let me check something here. Yeah, I think that was that night. Wow, I'm surprised that system's on here, to be honest. That was the night we had that deadly tornado. I was there at FSU covering that. We had a tornado hit Duet, Florida, and it was a tragic scenario. We had some fatalities down there. So I don't think we're going to have that type of threat, but we don't have that type of risk in play. It was a slight that night, if I remember right. And we had another, some of the analogs don't show anything for severe weather. So don't, the percentages say it's not a huge chance even from a few days ago, but as I look at the map here, there's 15 analogs, and from a few days ago, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them. So it's some severe reports somewhere in the, country here per se, or in the vicinity. One looks like it's not over land. We had a report around East Coast back in 1980 in this pattern in January. A couple wind reports in Central Florida back January of 1986 in a somewhat similar pattern. We had 1997, right after Christmas, some tornado reports, a couple there around Orlando-ish area, Central Florida. But yeah, I'm surprised that morning there, that 2017 one shows up in here. I don't think we have those type of parameters, but we have to watch out for a warning or two for sure, including an isolated spin-up tornado. So, and that was at night though. So I mean, I talk about needing daytime heating. And, some of these patterns you need it, but that was at night there. That was all at night. Really, that was an all-nighter at the Love Building there in 2016, covering that. I'm a little surprised to see in the FSU Weather studio, but on live stream, it was livestream.com/FSU Weather back then. But anyways, we go ahead and look here, uh, as we look and as we track things here, uh, we're just going to keep looking at these storms to see how these parameters come together. You can kind of see we have, again, maybe weak rotation in southwestern Marion. Normally I'd be able to say one way or the other on this. I really don't have a lot of confidence here. I don't have a lot of confidence here on what's, I don't think there's anything severe around Dunn Allen to Bellevue, but it's possible we could have a gust of 40 or 50 in there. There's not even an advisory. I don't necessarily, I just don't have a lot of confidence because we're so far away on the radar there, right on the boundary, so things can happen kind of under the radar sometimes down there. We have areas that are a lot closer to the radar. This isn't really that impressive, but it's something. We'll have to watch it as it gets closer toward Clearwater here. Some rotation. And then this main line here, again, there's not a lot with it, but there's this bluish box now, gusts to about 30 4 knots or greater. As we're looking there, Inglewood to Tarpon Springs out 20 nautical miles. Tarpon Springs to Swanee River out 20 nautical miles. Inglewood to Tarpon Springs out 20 to 60 nautical miles. Waters from Tarpon Springs to Swanee River out 20 to 60 nautical miles. So, again, just trying to give you guys the latest there. Some folks in the area could have won that Bucks game. Probably pretty disappointed if they were Buck fans losing that to New Orleans today. People headed back up this way. You definitely could have to watch out here. But, go ahead and go if you can, probably. I mean, as we're looking ahead, as we're tracking things here, just because if you wait too long here, you're going to be in a situation where, you get caught in more of this, more than line. I mean, you have this here. I mean, you might be able to catch a break and kind of go in between here, assuming it doesn't fill in. But as we continue to look here and track things, we have a, again, little pop-up stuff, weak rotations. I mean, we could get a water spout out of one of these that comes right to the coast and then probably would weaken after that. Again, trying to give you guys the very latest here. Just trying to give you guys the very latest on all this. Again, people headed home from these different games. We have some of these, moderate downpours, around Gainesville here in Alachua County. Light to moderate around Stark right now here where we're at. In fact, I can pull up our camera outside where we're at right now and kind of give you a view. As we're less than an hour from sunset here. So it'll be starting to get a little darker, but we'll go ahead and pull that on up. You can definitely see some of that precip there telling that story as we look at the trees out there. Right now, you can see some of that rain falling live right now here in the ward of Bradford County. So again, we haven't had rain in a while. It's cool rain, like Lake City's at 55 right now. In the upper 50s in Duval, low 60s here in Bradford, 61 at the airport and Keystone area. We're actually at 58 though, so 61 in Gainesville. So it's hard to get severe weather in that. 65 Marion, 64 Flagler. That's when you start to have a lower chance, but it's mid-70s, some areas around Tampa. I mean, they're 80 in Punta Gorda. This isn't maybe the perfect time, in a bad way for this to come through, but some of these warmer temperatures down here, if this was at a different time, you'd have a little bit more of a, mixing there of potential. So, again, we're just trying to continue to watch that. I know what a great win by Jacksonville today. Trevor Lawrence and the like there. I know it's merging those words together, but you get the idea. So excited about Jacksonville there getting that job done, but now all this rain, albeit pretty light, coming down here toward Jacksonville right now. You can see the stadium there. I know we won't have to worry about the weather inside with the ponchos for the most part. There'll be little holes, maybe could still cause some lightning delays. We didn't have to worry about that today, but in a few years, it'll be about maybe some delays, a spot or two with some of that rain coming in, but not too big of a deal overall. But I know the Jags getting that win there, 36-19. As we're looking, they beat the Colts. Too bad for the Colts, really unfortunate. thoughts and prayers to Daniel Jones there. He got hurt in that, looked very serious with an Achilles situation, it would seem. I don't know if anything else has come out in the post-game press conferences, but Trevor Lawrence there, over 240 yards passing today, over 100 quarterback rating, 2 touchdowns there. Travis Etienne with 2 touchdowns there. Just great work getting that job done. Brian Thomas Jr. with a 39-yard completion. Tim Patrick, 37 yards. Jacoby Myers had a touchdown, 4 catches for 39 yards, it would seem. And then looking at the situation, the defense there, Devin Lloyd, doing some great work there. Going down the chart here, Cam Little, 48-yard field goal. He made both of his field goals today 100%. He made all 4 of his extra points. He gave the Jags 10 points. Without him, it'll only be 26-19. And then, granted, I hope you don't have somebody miss all those kicks, but, in general, they're always big for him. Logan Cook had a 50-yard punt at one point in the game, averaged a 45.7 with his 3 punts today for the Jacksonville Jaguars, doing such great work. To just get a message scale discussion as we switch topics here from the Storm Prediction Center in Norman here as we go ahead and look at this. That you see, this is where the most concern. It's not in our area, but that could impact folks here in the Sunshine State. They're saying there's only a 20% chance of a watch. I'm sure it's higher back on that day I was alluding to in 2016, probably, and we had a watch, I know, in that area, but I don't think we're going to have that kind of threat. There's other things and just certain things that the perimeter analogs are focusing on there, but 20% chance of a watch. Locally damaging wind and a brief tornado possible this evening. A storm cluster, according to their discussion, as I kind of read it verbatim, has intensified this afternoon across the Northeast Gulf. We're an offshore buoy there in the sea, I guess. Recently reported a gust of 52 knots there. That was around 20:50 UTC time, so a little over an hour ago at 3:50 Eastern. This storm cluster appears to be accompanied by a mid-level vorticity maximum and surface fluid evidenced by whether strong pressure falls at the buoy preceding the severe gust. I know this is, this is important information to look at these buoys. I know it's not a tsunami or anything like that, but that's, another thing that buoys are important for. This is nothing like that, obviously, but, this is important stuff to look at here. If we don't have good radar coverage, actually getting a little bit of ground truth out here with some of these buoys, that stuff could be pretty strong. Downstream of this cluster, modest destabilization, has occurred at modest destabilization across central and southern parts of the peninsula, along and south of a, zone there. As we're looking with the overall pattern from a near and south of Tampa eastward to the south of Cape Canaveral and weak collapse trace as observed in the 18Z Tampa Bay sounding there will tend to limit instability across the peninsula into the evening. However, any organized storm structures that approach the coast or develop near the boundary may be able to persist within the favorability there, in the moist environment, that favorably moist environment. Near and south of the organized, zone there that we're seeing on the weather charts, and a substantial increase in some of that flow has recently been noted in the VWP there in Tampa, which will also aid in maintenance of any organized cells and clusters and provide sufficient effective storm relative helicity for low-level rotation. A brief tornado will be possible near and south of the surface boundary, or at least weak surface-based buoyancy will persist to the evening. I know, just to add to this in our area wouldn't necessarily come on for a tornado warning down here, but anybody has tornado on Twitter, good account to follow. If something's really significant, you may, have to do that or retweet stuff anyway, down there. Also, you have the overall weather system with the weather radios and the like, always important, but brief tornado could be possible near and south of the surface boundary, where at least weak surface-based buoyancy will persist through the evening. Locally gusty/damaging winds will also be possible, especially with any of the stronger offshore storm structures as they approach the coast here later this evening. So, again, we'll watch down there in toward that area there. As you see, this goes from about Newport Richey over through Lakeland and Winter Haven, Fort Meade, Wauchula there, down all the way through Northport, Punta Gorda, You see some of these spots there, Rotunda, for instance. So we'll watch that zone there for maybe some organization with some stronger to severe storms. Pressures are 1,012, 1,011 in that area. You have some more instability coming in down there. Yes, you have some supercell composites, and I mean, look at that tornado parameter. It's over a 1 here. That's not, sitting like anything you'd see in the Midwest. That in general that'd be too bad, but that's enough down here with that combination. That could be problematic. I guess some tornado warnings, a few down there, Tampa, to St. Petersburg, Bradenton area. We've had weird days where you have a low risk. The timing isn't perfect. If it was a couple hours earlier, I'd be, way more concerned that, the Bucks game there and just, more instability. But as we're looking down there, I know, yeah, that Bucks game didn't work out too well for him. Only, on in that Tampa market in the state. Everybody else, I think, pretty much watching the Jaguars here and get that win. What a great job there again by the Jaguars. I know everybody, I guess the Pensacola market didn't. I say everybody in the state. I forget the Dolphins. They won again today. As we're looking at the picture, I kind of forget about them, to be honest. I don't mean to, but it's just they haven't been that, they made the playoffs. They haven't won a game in like 25 years in the playoffs or something. So, again, not trying to, kind of be mean. It's just, that's how it is down there. And not a team that we look at. We just look at Tampa a lot more. They won the Super Bowl pretty recently. We're, playoff team here, but now I'm looking a little bit, iffy with the NFC South. Maybe Carolina has a chance even, with their quarterback, Bryce Young, the Heisman winner, going back. I know Mobile, Pensacola. Yeah, that market didn't have the Jags game. They had the national game. Pittsburgh, Baltimore, Fort Myers, West Palm, Miami had the Dolphins game. Tampa had the Tampa game. Orlando, Jacksonville, Gainesville, Tallahassee, Panama City, and then Georgia, Alabama, Dothan, Albany. As we're looking there, Alabama, Georgia, and then those markets, Savannah, all getting the Jags game there. So, again, just trying to give you guys the very latest on all of that, obviously, as we're looking at as we're tracking things there. As we give you guys the latest, I know, speaking of the Heisman, of course, Fernando Mendoza should win that. What a great performance last night by Indiana. A true underdog story. I mean, in college football, wouldn't that be great if they finished 16-0 there and won the national title for college football? Our Georgia fans probably wouldn't think so there in our southern Georgia counties, but Indiana, that'd be a perfect story. It wants to be like what Bob Knight did in '76 in basketball. That's what I've heard there. And, have a perfect year, win every game, win that title. I mean, never even been number one in college football until today in the history of the team. And Lee Corso before that, decades ago, had them as high as they'd ever been until recently, the last couple years now. Just this year, just incredible, incredible work there by that coach there up there. As we're looking up toward Indiana there, the Hoosiers, Kurt Signetti just doing wonderful work. I know. Yeah, speaking of Indiana, the other teams in Indiana, the Colts, obviously, as we've alluded to today, and the Notre Dame. Wow, they got left out of the playoffs after winning 10 straight. One thing about the college football playoffs, I will say, that I've noticed here, I thought FSU could have won that title in 23. Could have been the best team then. Notre Dame be not the best team in terms of their resume this year. Like, you could argue FSU then, but Notre Dame, they've been winning by a lot of points, and they might be the best team now on the field. And they won 10 in a row, and they didn't even make the playoffs. They obviously should have been in over Alabama. Alabama should not have been there. I mean, Oklahoma, you could argue they shouldn't have been there. Ole Miss, I mean, they don't even have a coach. I mean, the head coach is gone. So they have been there. To Lennon and Madison, you can't, they need to be there because of what happened to teams like Boise State and Utah in the decades preceding. But they obviously probably aren't as good as Notre Dame either. You got to feel bad for them. But still nothing like what happened to FSU 2 years ago, being unconquered and being left out. But still a big deal and not good. Probably need us at this point. Last year teams left out. They weren't that good in the bubble this year. Some were. I mean, you could have made cases for Texas and Vandy. We may, whether people want it or not, may end up just needing a 16-team playoff at this point. I know. I also could just argue that the top four, though, this year, you can almost say that the top four would have been all we needed because as we look down toward Tampa again and some of this nasty weather down there. Let's put on lightning tracker down here. But, you know, you could have argued the top 4 is all we needed because just one unbeaten team in that, and then you had Ohio State, which came close, and then your other 2 conference champions. Those are pretty clearly the 4 best teams this year, so wouldn't have been much debate. I wouldn't have thought, I wouldn't think. I mean, because Indiana, they only won by a little against Ohio State. They won by more in Eugene over Oregon, so that wouldn't, Ohio State would be in, Georgia would be in, Texas Tech would be in. It wouldn't have been much of a debate, and that would have been that. So, yeah, but obviously 2 years ago, there was a lot of debate because FSU should have been in. But as we go ahead and look back in the radar here, you look down toward Clearwater there around Pinellas County. You see off of Dunedin. You have a little weak rotation there off of Pinellas County. As we look off of Pasco and Hernando there, you see some rotation there. You track this, you track what we're doing with that wind. You just continue to watch the Doppler perspective. I know some of those games maybe we're watching other than the Jags game. They had that snow up in Buffalo today. Looking up there, that lake effect, snow can be a story sometimes up there for sure. And you just see snow all over the region in this pattern as you're looking there across western New York, western PA, eastern Ohio, and the like. You see some of this cloud cover in Missouri there. Definitely not a fun day in South Bend, Indiana in the 20s. And being left out of that playoff despite only losing their 2 games by a combined 4 points. They're, lost by 1 point against Texas A&M, 3 points against Miami. They should have been below Miami because of the head-to-head. But you got to put them above Alabama. I mean, Alabama lost by 21 yesterday against Georgia. They lost by 14 to FSU. They lost, I'm not sure what the margin was against Oklahoma right off the top of my head, but they lost that game at home. I mean, Notre Dame lost at home by 1 because of a special teams there against Texas A&M, who's ranked higher than Oklahoma. I mean, so many points there. It's obvious. I mean, Notre Dame should have been in. I mean, not as obvious as it was with FSU, but pretty close. I mean, you could have made the case. I mean, both teams, those were teams that had, FSU obviously undefeated that year. I think they would have, probably won the title even with the backup quarterback, Kate Rodemaker. Notre Dame had their starter there, the freshman there, of course, C.J. Carr. They're playing about the best, just playing the best ball of anybody, as good of football as anybody in the country, and getting left out of the college football playoff after winning 10 in a row in a 12-team playoff. It was 4 teams, yeah, leave them out, but 12 teams, not so much. Got a winner, they'll join a conference, so after this, I know the ACC's rules there in terms of the conference title game should have probably, Miami, they should have had them in there. They should have, if they wanted to have been in, and you would have only had one of the group there. It would have only been Tulane, not James Madison getting in. That would have made a lot more sense. Would have been a lot easier for everybody. But not the way it worked this time around. As we get back here, as we look down here, we watch some of this rotation. Let's go ahead and watch this. We'll probably wrap it soon. I know this is looking pretty strong here off the coast, but it's not our area. It's pretty far away still. But yeah, this is intensifying some. How fast is this moving? 30 knots. So let's see, how many miles are we from the coast there? 55-ish. So be over an hour, maybe hour and a half before it gets to the coast there. With some of this more intense banding, saying that 6 o'clock news time frame. The newscast might have to cut away to severe weather coverage down there in that 6 o'clock hour in the Tampa Bay market. Probably, something our area is going to pretty much miss, even our southern counties. It was a severe potential from what I'm seeing. You see the parameter supercell. Those are pretty nasty looking. That's over a 5 off of Tampa supercell composite there. Some of that's in a line, so that's not going to, it still could allow for some spinning, but it's not going to be like generally a strong tornado threat. In theory, a tornado could have winds as high as 115 miles an hour in here, though, according to Storm Prediction Center, and wind gusts to 70, but it could be more like the 85 with the tornadoes, if any of them develop, and gusts 55, 60 there. But again, I just continue to watch all that. Looking here again, our rain and storms moderate, so be careful on the roads. Obviously, always important to be careful on the roads. You know, we've had accidents around recently. You just got to be very mindful here as we're looking at things, as we're tracking things with these slick conditions. I have the lights on. I know. I'm just trying to give you guys the very latest here. Checking if there's anything right now in Bradford County. I don't see anything right now with accidents, but yeah. So be careful on the roads here as we're looking at things and as we're tracking them. I know very early on Saturday night for that Christmas parade here in Stark, since we're not doing a formal update late Thursday, let me look at that forecast here right now. It looks to be one where I would lean against it being wet, lean toward it being dry, but it'd be cool as we're looking there. It would be cool for that. As we look and as we track things, I know in terms of the hour by hour right now, that's going to start at 6 o'clock there. That's the schedule, and believe it's going down 301 this year, 52 at 6 o'clock there, by 7:48 with a wind chill 45, and maybe even a freeze by that 14th Sunday morning. But yeah, definitely some jacket weather. Like to maybe even heavier jacket weather for some, depending on how long you're out there. It's after dark, so that's pretty cool out there. Not just completely frigid, but it's pretty cool, obviously, for a Christmas parade. But it might feel like Christmas a little as we're looking there. That might be one positive. Definitely a little breezy, but at night that's to die down some with the winds, which would be a good thing with the floats. You don't want too much wind with those, but in the afternoon it could be pretty gusty if you're getting those last preps done. Could have gusts between 20 miles an hour on Saturday, so that's something to kind of keep in mind. But the rain should, the models, they weren't that great handle on today, even maybe a little more severe threat further south, especially out of our area. A little less rain in our area, but still a good bit. And we need the rain very badly because of the drought. But they really, the organization on them, the timing was off. I mean, all the models were always showing the wrong thing. They were showing more of a banding there. Heavier downpours that really could have made things wild at the Jags game. Just nasty, more than wild, I would say. Unfortunate for Indianapolis, their quarterback getting hurt, it would seem. I don't know exactly how much the rain would have played a role in that, but definitely not a good situation for them. Jacksonville, things went really well for the Jags. They're 9-4 now, so possessing a first place in the AFC South. If they keep looking at this very rotation here, this does seem to be intensifying some off the coast there of the Bay Area. So this is something to have to watch here. I know this is really far out. Let me just kind of watch here. You can kind of see the progression. Sometimes it's really hard. I look at these behind the scenes a lot. Not always on for stuff like this, but you see that rotation there. And if that were to hold together maybe an hour and a half, so maybe, let's say, give or take around 6:30 to 7-ish. This is a guess right now, so please stay tuned if you're in this area especially. But maybe somewhere between about Tarpon Springs and Dunedin. That's a guess, though, right now. I mean, it may, that's really preliminary, and I might need to broaden that out a little even, to be quite honest. Let me just kind of track. I'm trying to use my mouse here with this area. You can kind of see that shear marker pop up here, some different ones. Let's just kind of tail it off here. Maybe Palm Harbor around 6:30 or 7. Maybe some type of tornado warning could be required. Severe thunderstorm warning, something like that. That's something to have to watch for down there. It's not a guarantee by any stretch. This is a marginal setup, but it's a non-zero tornado risk. As I go ahead and pull up those tornado safety tips here right now. Again, just pulling those up, 630 building if you have a tornado warning. Not expecting a tornado watch. Not 0 chance, 20% chance right now for that. Out of our area, though, is where it would seem to set up if we had one. But 630 building, get as many walls between you and the outside as possible. Protect yourself from flying debris by putting on a bicycle helmet, football helmet, or baseball helmet. If a tornado warning is in effect for your area, have the shoes ready to put on as well. Because if there's a tornado, you don't want to cut your feet up in the aftermath, and the mobile homes aren't great places to be in tornadoes either, obviously. We haven't had to do this too much lately in the state. Probably not our area. Probably not going to be our story, but it could be a big Tampa story, maybe just small side note Tampa story, or even into the Fort Myers / Sarasota market. We'll see as we're looking and as we're tracking things. You can see mid-70s here, though, as we're giving you guys the looks at things here. Again, watching the Doppler perspective. Let's go ahead and stay up toward North Florida again. I know UF had some exams yesterday. They had those study days. I know FSU doesn't do it like that, but UF has study days. I don't know if that's the exact right wording for them on Thursday, Friday, though. Exam Saturday, exams this week, graduation coming up. Good luck to those students as well. Obviously, already alluding to my nose there. Great, great, week ahead, hopefully, if things, in terms of the exams, work out for you. Just wishing everybody the best of luck with that. Also, again, we mentioned it during the week, but now, it's happened. The last newscast for legendary WCJB TV 20, the chief meteorologist Mike Potter have happened. He started the morning edition back in 1995, and he retired on Friday after 33 years. He started there in 92. I worked there for a short bit in 84, but he retired there after 33 years, the last 33, began at WCJB TV 20 there full time. He started out on the noon, 3 days a week, and the weekend evening broadcast. And, on the morning, so the last 30 years or so, starting that, went from a half hour to an hour to 2 hours. Congratulations on his retirement there in WCJB after 33 years. So, best wishes to him and his family. As we go ahead and broaden the view back out here, we're going to go ahead and show you this view. As we look here, we're watching us, legit rotation there off the coast. So make sure if you have family and friends around that area, they're watching, especially right around the coast, where sometimes the parameters can overlap more. Be just past sunset, so could have a water spout come ashore as a tornado, or even could get this is a line. There's lightning here. There's not really lightning much. I mean, as I say that a little around Dade City, but this is where you have more of the parameters in play, more of the atmospheric forcing for things to be a little more adverse. So, as we showed you in the modeling before. As we showed you on that modeling before here, I'm going to show it to you again, some of the latest runs of things. We'll be watching downstate, obviously, here for some concern. So, again, you have the temperatures on this map. That's what the numbers are in the 80s in parts of, South Florida there, per se. As you look at the different platforms they're on. I know. As we go ahead and switch back on over. There's a model, and I know we do, maybe a few Miami fans, some Georgia fans here in our area here. Well, their games, I know the Georgia Bulldogs, their first game in the playoffs, they'll be playing there as we look ahead in the timeline. As we get toward that new year, they'll be playing in the Sugar Bowl. So that's inside of New Orleans. Weather won't play a role, but Miami, they'll be playing there at Texas A&M on the 20th. Too far away to know the weather for that right now, so we'll be watching that, obviously. We'll be watching the weather for the other games as well there in the college football playoffs. There's, first round games, that game there to start things off in Norman, Oklahoma. Sooners, they already beat Alabama once. They have to beat them again to advance in the playoffs there. Alabama the 9 seed, and they didn't drop in the rankings after losing by 3 touchdowns yesterday in a game where they had -3 rushing yards. But they can now get a chance to beat Oklahoma, a second chance at the Sooners there. And if they win this, Oklahoma's season's over, and Alabama advances. And they'd play the winner, or look at it, the 8-9 games. They'd play, they would play in that next round there. As we're looking at and as we're tracking things, it'd be Indiana. I haven't studied the bracket too much yet in the second year of the format, so not quite like the basketball tournament where everything's ingrained yet. But yeah, I guess they'd play Indiana then in that next round. The winner of that game, out in the Rose Bowl in Pasadena. Apparent Heisman winner to be Fernando Mendoza on New Year's Day with great head coach Kirk Cignetti going against either Alabama or Oklahoma to open the year in 2026. But as we look at the modeling here, you can see, looking here at the mapping, this shows some severe potential. It says a little north, quite honestly, of where it would make more sense for it to be at this point. Let's see. I'm going to check some other models I don't normally use. This shows it a little bit. Yeah, that looks more realistic and not perfect by any means, but you can see some of that moving in on the Tampa Bay area tonight around 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, give or take. We'll pull up this model here. Let's go to the more recent run of this. This is a little slow, actually, moving some of this in, but it shows some potential downstate. Again, you almost have to use the nowcasting you know, thought here. And as I look at the boundary, you see where we have the turning of the winds. And right now, that is more so, kind of down in here. And, it's really south of that where we'd have the parameters, the instability. So I think our area, except for maybe far southern Marion or southern Flagler or something, you're pretty much in the clear from severe weather unless something really pops up under the radar. But downstate, it's a different story. We have to just watch out for the slick road as we're almost at sunset now. We're almost at sunset. I'll pull the camera up here. You see it's pretty gloomy on this Sunday evening as we're looking outside right now. From afternoon to evening since we've been doing this. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here pretty soon. And I think we've said about all we can say about this. You see your temperatures again. 80 down there in Sebring, 80 in North Punta Gorda, 59 Keystone, 58 here east of Stark. We're up to 0.85 inches here today since midnight. That's a good bit. We're hoping for a little bit more because we need a little bit more because of drought, conditions. We'll see if that's enough to lift the burn ban. Again, they might do it for a little bit here. It just kind of depends. I would like to see more rain there, to be quite honest. I mean, it doesn't seem like when you hear the roof, it's coming down so steadily, which is a good thing to prevent flooding, but could have used a little bit more of this. It doesn't sound like that much rain, but the last hour says about 2/10 around Stark, and then overall her last 12 hours about a ½ inch according to this. Some of these areas in southern Taylor a couple inches, last 12 hours. Wakulla, a couple inches. Eastern Gadsden, 2 inches. The purple is about 2. If you look here, the darker ones, the purple to reds, the lighter purple is about 1.5 inches, give or take. Lighter blues, a little less than 1.5 inches. Darker blues there about 1/2 to maybe 3/4 inch, give or take. So, and then the dark greens are about 1/4 to 1/2 inch here, according to radar estimates in the last 12 hours or so. As you see, some efficient producers of precip down here off the coast in the Gulf, 5 inches there at one point, as you can see. And the current hourly rates here about 1 inch off of, Tampa there by, and, really off of like Palm Harbor, Newport Richey by about 60 miles or so. So again, we're just going to keep on watching the situation as we look at the coast here. We try to give you guys the very latest on everything in the overall grand scheme of things. Again, it's not our area downstate. We're always on for any warnings within our 62 counties. If something's really significant, we would break in, but it probably wouldn't reach the level of a significant tornado. You have 2 or stronger. That's obvious on radar when it's happening. But you do have the NWS Tampa Twitter account. I'll retweet stuff and post stuff on Twitter as needed. If I need to pop in, I will. But again, it's not our 62 counties unless we get something in Levy, Marion, Flagler, which, is severe, which is looking less and less likely as the minutes go by here. It's looking, you see 70 plus from Brooksville over towards Zephyr Hills and Plant City, Lakeland, Tampa, MacDill Air Force Base, Clearwater, St. Petersburg, the airport further down, 76. Tampa Bay Rays are excited getting back the Tropicana Field in 2026 after what Milton did last year. And then you have 76 in Sarasota. Bradenton, you have 82 down here around Fort Myers. Some of this, some of the temperatures drop some later on here. We do have the risk as I show it to you. It doesn't really go that far based on just the overlapping of parameters. It goes to about Punta Gorda as we're looking right now according to our maps here. From the Storm Prediction Center, Arcadia, Wauchula, Sebring, over toward Palm Bay and Sebastian and Vero Beach, and so Yeehaw Junction there in southern Osceola County. Yes, Osceola County under a small risk of severe weather. I said a tornado cannot be completely ruled out, even in Osceola County and Orange County. As we look at the instability, some of this will be dragged in, some of it, though, as we look at some other views of it, some of it may not, but those wind parameters are pretty impressive. Not overwhelming, we just haven't had much in a while either, so we actually have a little bit of a legit risk down here on Tampa. We need to watch down there our friends around the Tampa Bay area. You see that lightning there as we give you guys the look at that. So still watching that view. We've got to watch our slick roads up here. Just have to be very mindful of that. Let me get a loop together of some of this here. I'm going to kind of show you how things have progressed here. As we've looked over the last little bit, we'll kind of run that through. And it's a Sunday evening here. As we've seen that precip impact area, things will, could have still some lingering rain tomorrow, but really drying out. We're going to be, seeing temperatures on Monday night pretty chilly as well this week. Our latest numbers on that here, we don't have a graphic to show for that here because we're just coming on live, but 41-ish maybe Monday night. Tuesday night maybe upper 30s, give or take. Maybe even chillier by Saturday night, really a Sunday morning more so. Even Saturday night, gotta have that jacket for that Christmas parade and Stark, I would say 50s, low 50s, upper 40s, something like that. So that is something to be mindful of. So let me go ahead and say this loop here on our other mode. You'll be able to see the progression of things here and the overall meteorological pattern. You'll be able to see some of that lightning, some organization there coming toward west central Florida. So folks do need to stay aware down there of potential, risky weather here in terms of some warnings in a few spots. So again, you can kind of see that progression. You see it's how it's more rain further north, throw the temperatures up. You can kind of see how we're under 70 here really in our area. The case down there further south in some of these communities. Now, as you look there, 70 Crystal River, then it, as we watch that sensor down to 68, and you see how the latest numbers dropping there. But you look at Brooksville, 72, 71, 72, 73, 71 as we go through the time frames on the METAR. It's the rain from the south went down a little to 70, but still some of that instability still lingering there. So just have to watch. You have some of those winds there that can kind of, especially as we get closer to the Bay Area, you see some of that southerly flow. You see the low pressure type of formation. There's some of those buoy reports we were alluding to. So areas just south of our area more so than our southern counties even. Really not too concerned about the southern counties. The longer we go on, the less I'm concerned about those few counties, but more concerned about Tampa area, quite honestly, than I was even when I came on. So need to be watching down there in that Tampa Bay TV market. That could be an issue in the hours to come with a few tornado warnings. Could be interrupting programming. People don't like that, especially when it's like, prime time on a Sunday night indoor football. But that could happen here as we look ahead, or they might just put some of that on their streaming platforms and the like. So again, that's the storyline down there as we look at the overall situation. Could happen to Orlando towards Sunday Night Football too. We shall see. Big game, Houston and Kansas City there. Big game for the Jags as they're watching, in a good spot right now. But for the division, they would want, Kansas City to win. For wild card, if they didn't get in, for the division, they would rather probably have Kansas City lose. But we shall see. A lot of people, a lot of the fan bases don't really want Kansas City in the playoffs because they've been so successful lately. This is how it is sometimes over the years and the decades because they have all that experience in the playoffs. So again, just continuing to look at things here, continuing to track them. And toward the Weather Center. We talked about Gainesville. I know there's exams. Maybe some folks didn't have any yesterday. They're coming back into town for one tomorrow. I know they have exams on Saturday at UF, as I was alluding to. Maybe you have one tomorrow, though, and you're coming back into town. Let's pull up the Paynes Ferry camera right now. Where people, once they get done with exams, they'll be getting ready to head home. I guess it's possible. I don't know how the schedule works. Maybe not, but exactly down there. But I guess if somebody had exams early on, it might have already be done, I guess. I don't know the whole story on that, but you see some of this traffic here on Paynes Ferry camera. I-75, mile marker 379.6. Definitely a wet go, but at least we're not tracking like smoke or fog mixing there. We've had tragedy down there before like that, if you look back over a decade ago with that, situation with all those, tragic fatalities down there. But that, pile up and the like of that issues down there in the past. But, the rain is helpful. Just be careful on the roads as we look down there in toward that area. As we go ahead and watch things here. Again, people headed home from that Jags game. As we're looking at things, let's see what we might have. A little bit more here. We'll go to the Ortega area, kind of down there in that area. We'll kind of throw up a view, kind of give you a visual on things. See I-295 west at Blandon Boulevard. You see the slick conditions there. All those lights on as we're getting at sunset now with the slick conditions. So folks trying to get home here, before it gets even darker and it's still raining, which is not, ideal. It's not the heaviest rain, but still not the funnest conditions to be out in for sure. So again, just gonna continue to be watching things here. I'm gonna continue to track them. Try to keep you up to date here on everything. I know, just looking at some things there up toward the Albany TV market. My thoughts and prayers go to those officers that were injured in a shooting there. As we look back toward that Friday, they've been injured and they've been in the hospital and the like. Just hoping for the very best with them. You always hate to hear about that. That was up in Tift County in South Georgia, and I covered there on Friday. 2 officers were, injured in a shooting, were shot there, and been in the hospital and wishing them the very best in their recovery there as the different details come on out in regards to that still. As we go ahead and look back to the south, I know Apalachicola, we just got this information in a record of 1.76 inches of rain that happened today for the daily record there toward that coastline, Franklin County. The previous daily record was 1.55 inches in 1996. Let's have a significant weather advisory now down toward the Tampa Bay area. This is an area that's already over land. A different storm altogether. So in some weak rotation, and the big line I've been talking about. Not enough for a warning, but you see some little areas of spin now. So I talk about the main line. This other stuff kind of fires up out ahead here. I don't know if we'll take away the energy from the other, but seeing some legit rotation there on this. Now as it's, kind of interacting with land, it seems to be intensifying a little bit as it hits land versus weakening. Not, you see as I back it up here and then go forward to current, you see some purple. We saw a little bit of wind in opposing directions, just a bit around Palm Harbor and Dunedin now. Not enough for a warning, but gusts to about 50 miles an hour or so possible in that area down there. So folks having to watch that down there in that Tampa Bay TV market as we look and as we track things here and give you guys the very latest on all of that. Just trying to see how the Doppler, indicates things here with the different signatures and the likes. Definitely, some heavy rain, inches and a half there, right around Home Harbor, on the very western edge here in the last hour or so, as we're looking and as we're tracking things in that vicinity. So, some weak rotation there. Not enough for a tornado warning, a little broader in a line there. Maybe that's a thunderstorm warning on that and/or tornado warning, we shall see, but definitely some strengthening going on there and/or Pinellas County, parts of Hillsborough counties, as we're looking at things down in toward west central Florida, the Tampa Bay area. So that's something those folks are having to deal with for sure. I want to go to the terminal Doppler radar. That's something we wish we had around here because it gives you a different vantage point on this, sometimes a little bit lower down view. This is only 700 feet up, and it doesn't look quite as bad. Sometimes the one, especially for the Orlando area, can help. Sometimes yesterday, I know, for instance, it showed the opposite, but a lot of times it'll show more rotation and you'll get a tornado warning. There was a storm there in the eastern part of their area there yesterday that was showing less rotation on the terminal. Maybe the angle was kind of, obscuring things, making it look worse than it really was from the Melbourne radar, but the airport radar showed why you did not need a tornado warning. It did not seem. This here shows a little more on the bigger radar. That's about 2,000 feet up, but when you get lower to the ground, the terminal radar at this moment at least, it's called a TDWR radar, which is a TTPA radar. It shows, some wind in here, sure, 20, 30, 40 miles an hour. In theory, you add these together to 50, but you don't actually see anything like a green and red couplet here yet. That could change very rapidly even as I go up here and the scans a little. just to kind of get the different angles in here and look at things. You don't see anything too crazy, but there is, could get a warning today. I said a thunderstorm warning, definitely not out of the question with that. I want us to watch, the lower pressure further out in toward the Gulf there. Gulf of America, Gulf of Mexico. I probably said it wrong. I've been ingrained to say that for a long time. It reminds me of folks in Jacksonville when TV used to, years later after it already wasn't a story when I got here when I was younger even. It used to be the AFC Central. It wasn't when I was here, but I could hear people on sports, in sports broadcasting in Jacksonville called AFC Central, but it's been the AFC South where the Jags have been for years. Just the same with the Gulf of Mexico. I've called that for years. That's what it's been for a while. And now it's the Gulf of America. So got to make sure, we talk about that Gulf there. And, it's just this habit because that's just how, I've said for, more than 10 years going back to FSU and now a little bit different nomenclature there. So Gulf of America is where this is all coming out of. So just to make sure I clarify that. If I, slip up, I've done it a lot. It's this habit. But again, as we look here and as we track things, I will go ahead and we're about to wrap it. But you kind of get the idea here. Some wind enhancement around Dunedin, about 50 maybe on the Doppler perspective. So let's go ahead and take it back to a local view here as we go ahead and continue to give you the updates. Obviously, it's always about protecting and informing you, your friends, and your family. It's getting dark. It's, the rain's still coming down. They're going to be careful on the roads. Hopefully some folks, if not, hopefully many folks are, hopefully at home at this point in time as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things. So just, hoping for the very best in that regard. Just trying to get folks home. I know they're trying to launch SpaceX's from a rocket from the Kennedy Space Center tonight. It was scheduled for 6:18. Now, over another hour because of this weather. I really doubt they'll be getting it up tonight. Window goes for a while, but I don't know if they'll be able to get it up tonight as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things here in the overall picture because of this inclement weather here for sure. So as we're looking down there, I mean, that's, I'm surprised they're even trying, to be honest. But as we go ahead and look here and track things, rotation tracker. So some of this yellow, but if we get red, that's more concerning. Don't really have it right now. See if we've had any of this in the last hour. Yeah, a little, but some of that could be false signatures. Not really, 100% sure on that. But when you have this red over a more consistent path and or with more, correlation and, overlapping, that's when you get more concerned. Same with like correlation coefficient. But a debris signature over an area of rotation, that's generally pretty concerning. That's not what we're talking about directly here, but just it's a similar idea. As we go ahead and continue here, probably not for too much longer. As we go ahead and just, kind of leave it at Tampa stations to cover more heavy convection down in their market. But we still had these light to moderate, rain showers / downpours, come on through our area. But that's heavier, more, coming, it comes in and it leaves out. Up here, you can see toward Gainesville, you see some heavier downpours there, but it's not red, it's yellow. So, it's more, the oranges, maybe, heavy downpour, yellows, steady, and dark green's pretty steady, but it's, not, it's a variation here. It's not, just completely, you're at the grocery store, you still could get wet, but you're not going to get maybe completely soaked if you're urgent about it. But be careful, don't slide down in those parking lots. That can happen in these conditions. Not something that really gets reported, but, that much unless it's really a bad situation. But it can happen. So be very, very careful, obviously, as we're looking and as we're tracking things here in that regard, because we haven't had this in a while. We need to just be very mindful here of all this. So, again, we're just trying to keep you up to date. Our next formal update will be late Thursday since we're off Tuesday night. But if we need to pop back in sooner, we will. With a marine warning downstate. As you're going to look outside here, it's going to be pretty dark now. As you can see, as we're getting there at sunset, telling that weather story though. You see the conditions here in Bradford County. Let me put the wind numbers back on. Nothing too crazy with them. We've had some wind here and there lately. I mean, the gusts of 12 recently. At the Keystone Airport, 20 in Gainesville. I know we had a marine warning going away. We have another marine warning coming on in here on our map. It's about to show up here. We'll be watching that down there in Pinellas and Hillsborough, but there's your new marine warning, a bigger one. And now, have they changed the wind on this to officially severe? They have not. They're saying gusts to 34 knots or greater. The other one that goes away in 2 minutes was also 34 knots, which is 39 miles an hour, tropical storm force gust versus severe thunderstorm gust, in terms of the overall wind measurement, mode of things. I know, gonna get some heavy downpours there and around Orlando. They had all that flooding a couple months ago. Haven't had much rain since, and some of that market, not Orlando proper, like talking about Brevard County and Lake County. It's not set up like that, but some of those areas that are vulnerable, stuff hadn't been fixed. I mean, if there's a really vulnerable area, heavy downpour still probably wouldn't be exactly ideal, but it has been a lot of time in the overall meteorology pattern to kind of try to get stuff fixed. But it's the heavier rain down here. That's always more concerning. I know you can get the interactive radar. We're not on the website there, cloudy.com/radar. So make sure you go to that if you want to kind of keep following along here. This isn't enough to leave the radar up for, I don't think. If we need to pop back in, trust me, we will. If it's local, we'll be on it immediately. If it's like Central Florida, West Central Florida, we'll at least retweet about it at Cloud Casey on Twitter. And, may go beyond that if needed. But really have to kind of, probably see a little more escalate, some more potential here. Just a few warnings, severe thunderstorm warnings. Let's see, a handful and a couple tornado warnings. If they're not too crazy looking, still could be problematic in a few spots. Then we'll just kind of leave it, to the local stations down there and be retweeting stuff there on Twitter at Cloud Casey. So that's going to wrap it up for now. I thank you so much for tuning in. I thank you so much for trusting me. Stay safe on the road. Those, can be slick out there. These, roads can definitely, with the wet weather, all that traffic in that game, you can have accidents in these type of conditions here. You just have to be really careful. You got to be really mindful of these inclement conditions here, and just try to stay safe. And sometimes, fog or whatever can catch you off guard, and you really have to be very mindful. And it doesn't take anything, but it's maybe a downpour even, or there's all sorts of different hazards that can happen. I know I see at Keystone Airport they're reporting only 2-mile visibility now. So is that going to set up some meteor for fog on our system? Not quite low enough visibility, but definitely harder to see, and it's at night. So 2-mile visibility there, 4-mile in Gainesville. Normally 10 is what is ideal. 7 in Lake City, as I'm looking at some of these off camera, 3 in the Jacksonville Neighborhood Station area. So yeah, be really careful out there. It's getting dark, obviously, as you saw on my camera outside where we're at. We'll pull that up one more time, but it's going to be even, yeah, there you go. I mean, there's no night vision on that. So, yeah, you need those lights on in the light now as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things here. So, that's kind of tells the story more. There's no night vision on that camera, so that's why it looks so dark. But you kind of get the idea here as we're watching the situation. You just got to be careful because we already have some fog, mist, and really more than mist, I would call this. From what I'm hearing, I would say legit light to moderate rain at points. Maybe not really downpours, but some folks who caught something different down south. Again, legit downpours in West Central Florida could get some warnings. You already have marine warnings, but you could get something beyond that here as we're looking ahead. I don't know why the marine warning is not showing up down there. Curious about that. Let me check something real quick here. I know they have one down there, so I don't know why that's not showing up on that system. I mean, I have other systems I can look at, so it's not a huge deal. I think a weak rotation northeast of Lakeland, by the way, around Polk City. That's kind of by itself. You need to watch that for Osceola County next little bit here, right at sunset. Sometimes weird stuff can happen with the overall pattern at sunset. Yeah, watch that around Polk City, this north of I-4 there. You just never know. There in Central Florida, and that could head up toward like the Kissimmee area, give or take, if that holds together over the next little bit. So just be kind of careful. That's starting to get a hook on it, or a shear marker starting to show up. It's kind of staying north of I-4 now, but it'll eventually cross it, maybe right there, the Osceola and Polk line, and then maybe get up into Kissimmee-ish area. So pay attention to that one there. Our terminal radars from Orlando is showing that too pretty well. I mean, as we're looking there, I mean, we're looking at some different ones. It's on the hook anyway. To go back a scan or two, let's go up a little bit maybe. We're watching that. Yeah, we're just going to pay attention to that stuff, off camera here, behind the scenes. No advisories on any of that further east yet or warnings, but we do have this here. Well, it's a little stronger there, north of Oldsmore. Some of the stuff strengthening over land a little bit is interesting, or at least maintaining. Right at sunset, that can play a role. There's some different factors. 40-mile-an-hour wind there, showing up on that mode from the terminal, so not quite as impressive off of that, but I know we're just going to keep on tracking things here to give you guys the very latest. So I'll leave you with this radar. I need to switch it back up here. I was going to switch to the other radar, but it's not showing that marine warning, so something a little bit off with that. I'll have to see what's going on with it. But you see the marine warning downstate. You see all rain up to here. We'll be paying attention. Again, severe weather doesn't look very likely. Even our southern counties at this point, I mean, there's a lightning strike around Citrus, but, be careful. This still doesn't have to be severe to be a problem. As we've alluded to, there's accidents and potential. In some cases, I don't know if it's because of weather, but even in reality, some. So I did that one, view of the accident aftermath there in North Jacksonville earlier, so in North Duval County. So just stay tuned, stay safe. We're gonna wrap it. Thanks for tuning in and trusting me. Hopefully we don't have to come back on, but otherwise, have a great night. We'll be back late Thursday. That's the plan here as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things in toward the weather center. So stay safe, everybody. Stay informed. I have multiple ways to get alerts if you're, especially, just south of our coverage area. If I'm, watching from Citrus and those areas down there, Sumter, Lake, Volusia South, I'm really paying attention. That's not my area, but you guys need to pay attention because we're probably going to have a few warnings pop up here, at some point in time with a severe thunderstorm warning or a tornado warning. I have a feeling we'll probably get, it may only be one, it may be several, probably not an outbreak, but, just have to be mindful here. As we're looking downstate, and even if not, still a lot of lightning down there compared to up here. That always can be an issue this time of year, catching people off guard. Don't want to be adding that with the lightning for yourself and or electronics. You got to be careful of that. Just don't want to have any fires start from that either. So not really seeing too much of that up here in our area though, so that's good. Again, thanks so much for tuning in and trusting me. I'm meteorologist Casey Cloud here in the Weather Center. Stay safe.